Vice presidents were like, yep, we accept every risk. We accept every risk. We don't care. Cybersecurity is not a big deal here, blah, blah, blah. And the reason was simple. They didn't understand the impact because when they didn't pay attention to cybersecurity. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is that time. Life of a CISO with yours truly, Dr. Eric Cole is in the house. I am so excited. It is one of my favorite times of the week I look forward to where we get to have a virtual chat talking about my favorite topic. To me, one of the biggest challenges organizations are facing, having a proper Chief Information Security Officer. So I always like starting with a few questions. And one of the questions I get a lot is, Eric, what if I'm not being invited to the meetings? What if the culture at our organization, when I came in at the CISO, is sort of security gets in the way, security is a roadblock? How do I get around that? And the best way to get around that is to be the yes person, right? Whatever they say, yes, 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 we can do it now. I'm not saying you do crazy stuff. It's yes, but, right? You always have a but on there. Yes, but here's going to be the issues. Here's going to be the challenges. Now, that's great if you're in a neutral spot. But if you're in an organization that you're already negative, which means they don't trust security, the previous CISO or security team always said no, always got in the way, always was a disabler to the business. So everyone sort of now has the reputation is covert mission, don't involve security. What you have to do there is you have to start building trust. And what I would start doing is just start finding a few vice presidents that you can get along with and say, hey, I know previous security wasn't a business enabler. To me, that's how we run this. If security negatively impacts the business, security is wrong. Can you let me start just sitting in on some of your project planning? I promise I won't get in the way. I'll only offer positive, constructive criticism. And if after the first meeting, you don't think myself or my team provides value, don't invite us back. And then what you're starting to do is they'll be a little hesitant, but they'll invite you. And you make sure when you show up to that meeting, and I kid you not, you come with some coffee and some donuts. You got a smile on. You make that meeting better. It doesn't have to be security. You have a lot of skills. Add value. Add tremendous value. And what I find is after that meeting, they're going to be like, wow, we like security. Even if they're like, we want to invite security again because they bring coffee. Who cares, right? You're still at the meeting. $30 for a coffee or however much. Starbucks is probably like $300 for coffee these days. I don't drink coffee, but you go in and that's well worth it to get at the table and change the reputation. So do whatever you can to get back in that room. Add tremendous value, and then the word will spread. The word will start spreading of, hey, security is really helping us. Security is now enabling the business, and all of a sudden things will start to change. But this is the important thing. You need to make sure you evaluate your team and you're careful on who you send to meetings. I have a friend of mine. He's a very, very successful security professional. This guy can find vulnerabilities in anything. This guy can find fault in the most secure system on the planet. He is brilliant. And they use him internally to assess and evaluate high net worth systems, high monetary value systems that could have huge impact if they get compromised. So he's great. He's always finding issues, flaws, and problems. That's great for that job. You do not send that person to meetings, especially new meetings that you want to get a good reputation with security. Because he's going to sit in the meeting and say, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is, and he's just going to find fault and be the no person in everything they try to do, and that's not what you want. Today's security person is a role reversal of 20 or 30 years ago. I remember when I worked at the CIA, and one of my first interns was in the Office of Security. And when I got trained, I remember it was an older, seasoned gentleman, And he said, son, let's go for a walk. I kid you not. And he put his arm on my shoulder and he goes, son, here's how we do things around here. We're going to send you to a lot of meetings. And initially, you're not really going to be fully prepared and trained, and you're not really going to fully understand security. We want you to read books, and the meetings is how you're going to learn, but it's okay, because don't tell anybody. But the first meeting you go to where they're trying to get security's approval, I don't care what they're doing. I don't care what security they have in place. At the end of the meeting, when they all look to you for approval, you sort of flip through your notes a little bit. You nod your head. You maybe do one of these. And then you say, no, sorry, we can't do it. It's not secure. And he goes, most of them will go away. Most of the projects were silly and crazy, and they were never going to get implemented. So you, by saying no, essentially kills it, which is good because it was never going to see the light of day. He goes, then, if you get invited to a second meeting, you then go in and take notes. This time you probably know a little more. You can even ask some questions, find out some additional details. This time at the end of the meeting, they do the same thing. Here you might even want to say, hey, I have a few follow-up questions I'd like to ask, and really sound like you're engaged. And then, of course, at the end, you sort of nod your head and go, I'm sorry, but no, we just can't do it. And he goes, most projects will then end there. But, if it makes it past those two and you get invited to a third meeting, then you come back and get somebody seasoned. Then you get somebody who really has been here for 10 years. They understand the details of security. And then at that point, we will really evaluate and see what's happening and what's occurring. Now, we could question whether that approach even worked 20, 30 years ago. But because security had to be involved, it was a sign-off requirement where I worked, they couldn't not invite us. So because we had to be invited to the meeting and we knew that a lot of these ideas were crazy and we had limited resources, it wasn't worth it to utilize those resources. So saying no was an effective strategy. Today, you can't do that. Today, if you say no, these business units are on such intense pressure to deliver and make revenue numbers, they're going to do it. So you either run alongside them and help them, or you try to stand in front of them and they're just going to go around you and make it a covert mission. CISOs and security teams that initially are overly critical and say no, and this is crazy, and there's no way you can do this. This is just not secure. This is not a smart way to do things. All you're doing is creating an adverse culture in which you're not going to be invited to the meetings. You have to be the positive business enabler. Yes, we'll consider it. Now, there might be a ton of security measures, or in a lot of cases, what I do is I go, okay, the design that you proposed, we could make this secure, but it's going to be a lot of money and a lot of energy and a lot of effort. But when I looked at the objectives you're trying to achieve, what about this design? This is a cheaper design. It's going to cost you less. It's going to get done quicker. It's going to deliver the same requirements, and it's going to be a lot more secure. What do you think of that? And now all of a sudden, like, whoa, you just didn't go in and triple our budget. You actually gave us a better solution with integrated security that is actually less money than we originally planned to spend in the first place. That's a world-class CISO. World-class CISO is always looking at what is the best solution. And if the current solution isn't the best, let's propose the best. Let's propose a new option or new solution. So always as a CISO, think about how can we enable the business? How can we creatively figure out how to make this work? If we had to make this work in order for the business to survive, what would be the options that we would come up with? That's how you have to train your team, and that's how you have to approach every single situation. Now, I always get some pushback going, but Eric, what if that just doesn't work? What if you have those folks, and I know in some organizations, you have those folks that have been there for 33 years, and they've done things a certain way, and they just don't care. They're just going to do it their way. It doesn't matter if it's secure. It doesn't matter if it's problematic. They're not going to listen to you. If none of those options work, then your final option is you do a risk transfer. And that's where you sit down with them and you're honest. You're like, listen, I know you're going to move forward with this project and it's okay. We've tried to help and assist you, and it doesn't seem like you want to listen to us or have security, and that's okay. You're not trying to make this an adverse conversation. But I just want to let you know that these risks I do not feel are acceptable. So we're going to be transferring that risk over to you, and we're going to present that to the board. But once again, not trying to be adversarial, but I need to make the board aware of this project. And in my mind, and I'm wrong, and I could be wrong, I think this is an unacceptable risk. So I just want you to be aware that you're not caught off guard or think I'm going behind your back, but I will at the next quarterly board meeting, when we have our risk briefing and we always present the risk transfers, this is going to be one of the risks that we're going to transfer over. I just want you to be aware. And now there's no surprises. Open communication. They might not like it. They might be frustrated. They might say it's not acceptable. I go, but what other option do you have? You want to deploy a system that I don't think is secure, but you don't want me to tell anybody that it's not secure. You don't want me to tell, right? It's one of those where at some point, the logic train is in your favor. Now, there's some people that don't want to listen to logic and they still might be annoyed or frustrated, but at least you did your job. And then at that next meeting, you present that risk to the board saying, you've transferred this risk over to this department because they want to roll out the system. You don't think it's acceptable, but they can clearly override you, and you just want everyone to be aware. That's the proper way to manage security. The mistake that they make, that most CISOs make, one is they try to fight it and say no and get in the way and derail it, which doesn't work. Or the second one is they don't tell anyone. They're just frustrated and go, why won't that person listen to me? This is crazy. This is ridiculous. This is nuts. I'm so frustrated that they're not doing or following what they're supposed to. And then you don't say anything. And then what happens? You have all the responsibility. So when a breach happens because they didn't listen to you, you get fired, which isn't what we want. World-class CISOs leave jobs when they want to, not because they're pushed out, because they have an artificial metric that if there's a breach, they didn't do their job. World-class CISOs manage that environment. So you want to make sure that you're always pushing the responsibility back to those that have proper authority. Now, what I'd like to cover in the teaching portion of this Life of a CISO session is questions, questions, questions. I am so obsessed with questions because to me, smart people know the right answer, but brilliant world-class CISOs ask the right question. So you want to make sure you're always asking yourself these questions and know the answer. For your business, what is your business? What is it that allows your company to make money? What is your competitive advantage? And how do you generate the most revenue, profitability? So essentially, you need to go in and not just say, we're a pharmaceutical company. No. If you're a CISO for a pharmaceutical company, I expect you to know what are the products and brands and divisions responsible for them that not only bring in the most revenue, but also have the highest profitability, and what differentiates you from the competition. Those are things you must be aware of because you're a business executive. And business executives always make decisions in favor of the business. So if you don't know the answer to those questions, you're going to have a hard time making proper decisions. Second, what could have the biggest impact on our business? What if it happened from a cyber security perspective would be a really bad day? And this is something I always like asking the executives. Whenever I get time when I'm doing virtual CISO work, and whether it's dinner, an elevator ride, or a 10-minute meeting with any executive, I'll always ask them two questions. One, how do you feel of the overall state of security? Right now, what is your comfort level? Are you very comfortable? Are you not comfortable? And then I always ask why. Why? And then regardless of what they say, what additional information could we provide that would give you a higher level of confidence? And then the other questions I always ask is, even with all that, even though you're comfortable, what scares you? When you're alone by yourself and you think about the business and you think about things that could be unexpected and negatively impact the business, I know cybersecurity is one of those items. What is that worst case scenario? Is it getting hit with ransomware? Is it all of our data disappearing? Is it availability attacks? Is it integrity attacks? That is important information because that's going to show you where you put your energy and effort. I will tell you right now, and you've probably already done it because it's a little too late. It's already December, the holiday season. But with COVID and the epidemic in 2020, they're predicting that online and e-commerce sales are going to go through the roof. Record breaking. So if you're a CISO for an online e-commerce company, for the last couple of months, you were obsessed with availability, uptime, and then probably secondarily, confidentiality and integrity of information. Oh, no, Eric, we need to make sure it's protected. No, let's figure this out. If you're an online store and you're going to make $100 million in December and 100% of it is online, you don't have any physical stores. If credit card data gets stolen, you can survive. If prices get modified, you could survive. But if that site is down, it's not available, and when somebody goes in to type that site, it says non-responsive or site not found, do you realize, especially in the digital age, we have no patience? You're not going to sit there and go, oh, I guess they're down. I'm a loyal customer. I'll wait 15 minutes. No, you're going to a competitor site. Now, here's the problem. Not only did they lose that sale, but a lot of times when you go to a competitor site, they have new features and options you didn't realize. And you're like, wow, that's super cool. I didn't know there was a comparative option. The e-commerce site I use doesn't have that. And then not only do they lose that sale, but you never go back and they lose you as a future customer. So that is the problem base. So if you're a CISO for an e-commerce site and you're sitting there and all you're worried about is confidentiality and protection of credit cards and you're not paying attention to availability, you're not going to be a very successful CISO. So you got to understand, tie those together. What is our business and how we make money? And based on that, what are the biggest cyber threats that could impact negatively our ability to make money? Being obsessed with the business. What is the risk tolerance of our organization? And what should the risk tolerance be? Now, this is getting better over the years. I remember 3 or 4 years ago when we would come in with CISO, it's like the risk tolerance was ridiculous. Vice presidents were like, yeah, we accept every risk. We accept every risk. We don't care. Cybersecurity is not a big deal here, blah, blah, blah. And the reason was simple. They didn't understand the impact because when they didn't pay attention to cybersecurity, the previous CISOs got fired because they had all of the authority and none of the responsibility. Now that it's shifting and we're doing our risk transfer models where now those executives are responsible, and if they're not listening to security, every executive knows, and when a breach happens, they now have the responsibility and the authority. The risk posture is starting to change, where they are understanding the importance of cybersecurity. They recognize the criticality that's needed to run the business. So you want to make sure that what the risk posture should be and where it is aligned. Now, here's the challenge. Organizations that have had breaches and have been aware of breaches and have been compromised, they're usually the ones that have a good risk posture. And the reason is simple. What's the reason why most people buy an alarm system for their home? They get robbed, a neighbor gets robbed, or a family member gets robbed, right? That is the number one reason why people do that. Most people don't think they need an alarm system until after they get broken into. Cybersecurity is similar. Many organizations don't think they're a target. They don't think they need to worry about cybersecurity. And therefore, they have a very lax risk posture, which is very, very dangerous. In those cases, you have one or two options. You can sit back and wait for the compromise and hope you survive, and then all of a sudden everyone will get serious, or you can show that the compromise is there with threat hunting. So what I always tell folks is if you don't have a good risk posture, because nobody thinks they're a target, nobody is concerned about cybersecurity, nobody thinks they have to worry about it, that is a really good thing to talk to your team or look at hiring somebody to do threat hunting within your environment. Threat hunting is going to give you that visibility that you need to start realizing you have been attacked, there are exposures and are vulnerabilities, so now you can catch it in 3 to 6 months instead of 3, 4, or 5 years. Now, we've sort of hinted on it and circled, but this is an important one. How do executives view cybersecurity? Do they view it as something that's everybody's job? Do they view it just as something that's a necessary evil, but they don't really understand it? Do they go, we don't really care about it because that's your job, that's your position? Once again, that would be saying that only the CISO should worry about security is as illogical as saying only the CFO should worry about finances. No one else should worry about finances or revenue or anything else. That's only the CFO's job. No. Really successful companies, everybody is thinking about revenue and profit. Everybody is thinking about revenue, finances in that organization. Well, guess what? Cybersecurity is just as critical. You might go, how do you figure? Well, it's simple. If you have a major breach, it's not uncommon for your company to lose 10, 20, 30, or 40% of its overall profitability on one breach. So if the purpose of the company is to be financially viable and to make money, and there's something that can wipe out 20 or 30% of your profitability, boom, like that, that's pretty darn important. That's pretty high priority that people need to understand and pay attention to. So we really want to make sure that we're dialing in. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. To me, when I do executive awareness, I tell them, listen, my job is simple. At the end of 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, depending on the level and the amount that we cover, my job is 2 things. I want you to leave here thinking differently about 2 things. You are a target, and cybersecurity is your responsibility. I know many of you are sitting here right now thinking that you, your family, and even your business isn't a target. You're not going to get breached. No one's going to bother you. It's not going to happen to you. It happens to everyone else but you, so you don't think you have to pay attention to cybersecurity. Second, you don't think it's your responsibility. You think you can do anything you want and you're going to be safe because the wonderful people in the security department are going to give you really secure lockdown systems. And I just want to tell you right now, neither one of those are true. You are going to be a target, and cybersecurity is absolutely your responsibility. So we need to make sure that that is ingrained into all the different business units. Now, another question. What cybersecurity KPIs can we start to put in place across the business? If you're not familiar, KPIs are key performance indicators. These are essentially measures that executives, vice presidents, and managers are typically bonused on. So, for example, a KPI could be that you have to bring in $30 million of business, or you have to maintain 40% profitability, or you have to go in and make sure that all your employees take the HR training, or that you're compliant with certain regulations. Those are the typical KPIs, key performance indicators. What you want to do is start adding security into that. You want it that if they are thinking about and following security, they get bonused. Here's the negative. If they're not thinking about or focused on security, they lose their bonus. So you can imagine that when you start rolling this out, they are not very happy. But here's the trick. The first security KPI needs to be one that's fairly mature and almost a gimme. because you want him to be encouraged. Because yes, if you can get the CEO on board, and most CEOs understand where you go to a CEO and you go, the number one problem with security today is this. All the business units have all the responsibility, but none of the authority. They don't think they are responsible for cybersecurity. Sorry. They have all the authority and none of the responsibility. I'm like, wait, that's a little backwards here, right? They have all of the authority and none of the responsibility. So now they're going to go in and do whatever they want, make mistakes, do crazy, do silly things. And what happens when the organization gets broken into? The CISO gets fired. They don't care, right? Unless it was their best friend, which is probably not. They don't care. So the model's broken. So Mr. or Mrs. CEO, if we want to fix this, if we want to start getting aggressive, we need to go in and hold them responsible. As long as these business units don't feel they have any responsibility for security, we're going to continue to have major breaches and we're going to continue to get broken into, regardless of the security department, because they're not going to listen. If you have people that are making decisions on system servers and processes and they feel like they do not have to listen or pay attention to cybersecurity, that's never going to work. So we need KPIs, we need key performance indicators. So you can very often get the CEO on board without any of the VPs, and then they just push it through. But it is a lot easier if the VPs are on board. It's a lot easier if they're behind you. So here's what you should do. Pick something that's fairly mature. Most organizations' phishing campaigns are fairly mature. They're getting like a 98, 99% success rate. People are sort of doing their thing. It's good. It's not amazingly awesome. Usually the phishes aren't super sophisticated, but it's okay. It's still doing a basic level of awareness. Use that one first. And you tell the VPs, listen, as long as you keep doing what you're doing, as long as your team keeps doing what they're doing, as long as you're supportive, you're right now at a 99.99%. And as long as you stay above 97, you're going to get your full bonus on this. So you're giving them an easy one. So now the first security KPI, they're like, wow, I'm going to get 10K or 20K or 30K, really not for doing anything, just for saying it's there. This is pretty cool. So now what you're doing is you're convincing them that security KPIs are positive. Then you can start adding additional security KPIs that require a little more work, a little more effort, and a little more energy. Now, here's what you shouldn't do. We had one of our clients that had phishing. And this is where security sort of flipped the cards. So when they were responsible, when security was responsible, they kept the sophistication low. So they got a 99%, so they looked really good for the executives. Because they were responsible, so they're like, we're getting 99, we're good, we're good, we're good. Then as soon as they made that a KPI, and now the business units were responsible, and they weren't, they're like, game on. And what do you think they did? They cranked up the sophistication. They now made it super difficult. We're not responsible. They are. Who cares? Right? And they cranked it up. And within 2 or 3 months, all these execs went from 99% compliance to 40 to 50% and started losing more than half of their bonuses. Let me just say, security needed bodyguards and bulletproof vests, right? They were not very popular. And to be honest with you, okay, payback so you know what, but that was mean, right? That was not a smart approach to do. Slowly crank it up. Now, if you already have mature KPIs and you want to play that game, you can. But the point is, remember, you're an executive and you need to integrate with the business. You don't want to have this adverse relationship with the business where everybody hates you and nobody wants anything to do with you. Now, a couple of final questions as we wrap up. And these are a little more on mindset, but they're super important. As a CISO, if you can only do one thing for the next 3 months, if there was only one thing you could focus on, what would that be? What would be one item right now that would be the biggest difference maker, that would have the biggest impact on your organization, that would have the biggest change that you are not currently doing or you're not currently doing a great job with? What is that one thing? And the reason I bring that up is when I sort of assess CISOs, one of the number one issues I have is they're trying to do too many things and they end up doing a bunch of things okay and not the right things at an amazing level. So one of the things I always do when I work with CISOs is you're doing way too much. Oh, Eric, it has, no, stop that. You want to do it. It doesn't have to get done. What if you can only do one thing? For 90 days, you can only focus on one thing. I know things aren't going to get done. Don't tell me it's impossible. Answer the question. If you could only do one thing for the next 90 days, what would it be? I'll give you some examples. Now, I'm not saying that's all you do, but I'll give you some examples. One CISO said, if I could only do one thing, it would be attend and learn more about the business. I clearly don't understand our business. I don't know how we make money. I really don't understand the revenues, and it's been hurting me. So if I could really understand the business and know how things work, I said, great. 10 hours a week, you attend meetings, executive meetings. Just ask if you can sit in. You want to understand the business. You're a trusted executive. There's no reason they shouldn't let you sit in on meetings, and focus on that as one of your top priorities. Another CISO I work with goes, Eric, I'm really dialed in with the executives in the business, but I feel very disconnected from my team. My team says that I don't understand what they're doing. I'm not really involved. I'm not really managing in the way that I should. I said, great. You spend 2 hours a day on the floor with your team, just walking around, seeing if they need help, taking them to lunch, sitting in their offices, just seeing what they can do. And you're doing it in a non-confrontational way, but you're just using that to build and get and understand your team. So it's always important to remember, a CISO is going to have too much to do, not enough time. So you need to constantly evaluate, and I like doing it at quarterly, so you do 4 resets a year, is 4 times a year saying, okay, what is one thing that I need to be doing better that I'm not doing? If I could only do one thing, what would it be? And then focus 20% of your effort every week on that one thing. We're not saying you don't do the other things, but you're just prioritizing what is that one top thing. And then tied to that is my final question as we wrap this up. What is one thing you're doing that you don't need to be doing that's wasting time, energy, and effort? What is something that's a time drain, that's using up a lot of energy and you don't really need to do it, or nobody really needs to do it? So now every quarter, you're increasing one area of one focus, 20% more, and you're removing one item that is wasting time. You do that after 2 years, after 8 resets, you're going to be unstoppable. You're going to be world-class. So I hope you enjoyed this edition of Life of a CISO. Remember, it's all about asking questions. It's all about constant improvement. And together, you can join me on my mission of making cyberspace a safe place to live, work, and raise a family. Please leave a comment below. Please go and email me if you have any questions. We'd love to do work with you. We'd love to help you out, perform assessments, or train you up on vCISO. So please visit secure-anchor.com or email me at ecole@secure-anchor.com, and we look forward to hearing from you and working with you in the future.